Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming and episode 4 of the SSF Tornado Shot run. When we left off the last episode, I'd basically pushed through horrendous red corrupted maps so that I could get the majority of my completion done and get the first 2 void stones so that I can then set up a nice comfy farm in tier 8 strands. So without further ado, let's jump into what you're going to see in this episode. The first part is going to cover the Legion and Expedition farming in tier 8 strand. I completed about 30 maps, so we'll go through how it felt and what loot we got out of the end of it. We're going to cover off some of the things that happen within that, which is being able to equip my Strength 6 link that I got last episode, and also finding a Lethal Pride jewel. We're going to go over the results from Rog and some issues I had when trying to craft a bow. There's going to be a T14 showcase for when we first transitioned to crit. Then there's going to be a POB review to have a look if I've taken all the right nodes and whether there's other nodes that I could do to make it better. Then once we've refined it after the POB, we're going to do a final showcase showing what the build's like and seeing if we think it can farm at tier 14 maps consistently. So there's just some quick tips to go over if you wanted to try and push to red maps. Firstly, put a cheap anoint on your amulet. You should have picked up some oils by now. I've anointed Fury Bolts, which we'll cover off, which is just 3 really cheap oils. It gives you 20% prod speed, which turns into damage through the mastery, 20% projectile damage, and it gives strength. Check POB every now and again to see if you can swap to crit. All you would do is put a bog standard bow in with some crit chance and an average quiver, take away precise technique, put in a few crit nodes and see how you come out. If you come out either equal or better than, then you may as well switch to crit and then just improve your gear as you go along. Test red maps occasionally just to see how it feels. There are obviously going to be horrible maps when you're corrupting them, but once you can pick what mods you can avoid, you'll have enough alks and scours to be able to pick the mods you want to run. If it feels okay, I'd recommend just moving straight to red maps. Review POB every now and again to make sure you're still getting value out your nodes. Some nodes that give really good damage early on get worse and worse and worse as your gear gets better, so just double check that all the DPS nodes you've got still offer value. If there's anything less than 2.5% per point, I'd consider seeing if you could put the points elsewhere. And like I said, move to red maps when you're ready. Don't feel you have to farm for X amount of time in yellow maps. As soon as you feel ready, go for it. You're going to get loads of benefits, such as being able to put Eldritch Altars on the map. You're also going to unlock Exile fights, which at some point you're hopefully going to get Omniscience if you start farming those maps, and you never know, it might be sooner rather than later. So the last thing I want to go through is a few things that I've noticed after doing this SSF playthrough that make this brutally hard to do a crit bow character. Now, the last league I actually did this in was the league where recombinators were there, which was Sentinel. So it's easy to craft bows because recombinators were fairly common. However, I've got massive issues trying to craft this crit bow, mainly because there is not really a way to deterministically craft it, and we're going to go through the reasons why. So they are hard to craft anyway, but they're made much easier by certain meta crafts that you can get. In trade, it's quite easy. You buy the maps, so it can be expensive, but you buy the unique map to unlock the trade that you want, to unlock the craft, and then you can go ahead and multi-mod bows. So the easiest way normally to do bows is you get prefixes, then you do prefixes cannot be changed, scour, and then you multi-mod. The issue is prefixes cannot be changed is locked behind one of the rarest maps in the game, which is Coward's Trial. I think I ended up having to buy this in trade. I've also spoken to a few people who play SSF, and they'd cleared the whole atlas and the feared before they'd even seen this map. And really, it's a key part to even get in transition into crit without a lot of luck. Getting good fractured bows is RNG. If we could get a bow with a good fractured suffix or prefix, it makes it a bit easier because you can roll with essences. Rog has rarely offered me the right bow base. I've probably done 40 to 50 Rog rerolls, and he's offered me a base that was usable 2 times. I ended up with a bow that is craftable, but I can't do anything with it without prefixes cannot be changed, unless I just risk an Ashleen in which I've got a 40% success rate, which might be what we do because God knows how long it's going to be before we see the map that we need to unlock the meta mod. So it's quite annoying, actually. I've never really noticed that this is a problem, but in SSF it is a huge problem because this, for any attack build and bow build, is a key crafting bench mod that you need, and it's very difficult to get in SSF. And I'm thinking that really essence spamming is realistically probably going to be the only way. So I might have to relook at essences, but I think even for that to work without using hundreds of essences, which in SSF I'm not really prepared to grind for, I need a fractured base. So I was thinking, do I need to look at the Atlas tree and look at the mechanics that I have and swap to different ones? So like I mentioned, essences are good for everything, but I did want to take these a bit more end game, but I may have to reconsider and spec into essences because at least then I can at least essence spam to get a usable bow. Because I've realized how hard it's going to be to craft a bow with big LE damage, crit and attack speed, I would happily just have LE damage and then crit chance, and then we'll come onto the attack speed later on if I ever get the crafts unlocked. Harvest is an option as well, but again, it's kind of just gambling. Again, it's not really something I wanted to put into the Atlas until later on. Harbinger, purely for fracturing orbs, but they're very, very rare. I would be farming a lot of Harbingers to get one of these orbs. And then it's RNG as to whether it fractures the mod I want from my bow. So I need to consider whether I want to remove Legion. I'm not going to do it yet because I still need a good Lethal Pride or Brutal Restraint. But once I've got one, it's probably something in SSF that I no longer need. I've unlocked my extra slot on the map device. I've got a Lethal Pride. Once I get a usable one, then I'm probably going to drop Legion and put in one of the above 3 mechanics. Let's move on to the farming of the tier 8 strands. I'm going to show you the Atlas tree that I used. Ignore these Kirak nodes. This is something I've added in later on. If you're unable to get all of these nodes, I would consider dropping the Syndicate nodes for now. You don't really need them. You just need to get all of the Expedition nodes and all of the Legion nodes. The only Expedition node we're not taking is the one that gives more Gwenin. This is the tree that you want to use. So while I show some highlights, I'll just talk through how I went about farming. And it's fairly straightforward. We've got Stream of Consciousness and we've got some blockers. So we get Legion and Expedition in more than 50% of the maps. Strand is nice and linear and it's nice and open, so it works really well for Legion and Expedition, and it's nice and easy to clear the map. It's very straightforward. You know where the boss is, and the bosses are both fairly simple. So all I was doing the maps as quickly as I can. When Expedition come up, I was completing the encounters, and when Legion did, I was completing them. I explained quickly in the last episode how I go about doing Expedition, and it's essentially getting any remnants that add quantity and rarity, and then I'm taking as many monster and chest nodes as I can. When I do Legion, I'm doing my best to break out the entire Legion, which is not that difficult because we do get a lot of extra time from taking all of the nodes. Then with my emblems, I'm focusing on Karui, because that is where a Lethal Pride is going to drop from, and I needed the strength from a Lethal Pride to make sure I'd equip my Astral Plate chest that I had 6 linked. So what I'm doing is whenever I've got 3 emblems and one is a Karui, I'm running a 3-way. I did start with a 4-way, but I literally didn't even clear 2 waves. It was just the DPS was nowhere near there. So it's better to farm the 3 ways because I'll get more bosses killed. You do get less time, but I'm killing the enemies much, much quicker. I do get a Lethal Pride jewel drop along with another couple of random Legion jewels that I'll never use. So it did work. And we did get 6 3-ways from our 30 maps that we completed. So we did turn over plenty of emblems. We got lots of Rog and Tusion juice as well. Rog came to absolutely nothing. Tusion, we got the usual currencies from him, which will help when we need to corrupt more maps, or just in general. I'm now getting a nice supply of lots of different currencies. I then went after this session and farmed most of the logbooks that dropped, just to get more Rog currency and Tusion currency. Word of warning, don't get too cocky. I was still on a non-crit. Yes, I was on a 6 link, but I was on non-crit, so I wasn't really scaling damage. I ended up getting Utrecht, the boss, I think his name is, in a tier 8 map, so I assumed it would be really, really easy. I juiced the explosions all the way and took the boss node last, and I couldn't kill him. I was very close to, he was about 12% health, and I have Cullen Strike, but I just couldn't beat him. There was loads of extra AoE, loads of damage, loads of mods that made him more tanky, and I just couldn't kill him. It would have been nice to get him down. It probably would have dropped between 10 to 20 Rog reroll tokens, but I got too greedy. I should have done the boss midway through the chain and then carried on. I just didn't think and stacked it up, just forgetting I was on a character that wasn't particularly good. So just a word of warning, if you get bosses in maps, be careful how much you're juicing them in your expeditions. So I mentioned we had a Lethal Pride drop, but it is absolute garbage. It gives me regen life, 5% strength, burning damage, fizz damage, fizz's extra fire, melee crit multi, regen life, and increased melee damage. So it is absolute junk. I've just put it in as a placeholder for now because it gives me all of the strength that I need to be able to run my 6-link Astral Plate. And then I mentioned I'd just go through the stuff that Rog ended up providing me. This is the bow we've gone with, and this is the bow where I mentioned I really want to be able to either multi-mod it or get rid of the suffixes and Ashleen or do something with it to make it better so I can get attack speed, because it's a fairly decent bow. It's got T2 lightning damage, it's got T3 cold damage, and it's got some fizz damage. What I've done now is taken a few conversion nodes on the tree and switched to hatred. And I wanted attack speed and then crit chance on this bow, but I don't have any of the crafts unlocked, so I've just had to craft crit chance on it, and it doesn't feel amazing. The attack speed is not great, but it was showing that my DPS was almost doubling by switching to crit, so it's something that I had to do, and that's going to be covered in the later bits of the video. So I'll just go through a few things that I ended up getting from Rog that are pretty decent. So we'll go through this chest piece first. This would obviously need to be linked, but it's an option for my end game chest because it's got 2 lots of life. It has an open prefix, T1 fire resistance, and T2 spell suppression. This alone would allow me to drop a couple of spell suppression nodes from the tree. We had this helmet drop, which is not a brilliant base, but it's not the worst. It's got big life, big fire resistance, big cold resistance, chaos resistance, and an open prefix so that I could craft fizz taken as fire. And then I can roll some Eldritch implicits on it later. This is probably going to be the replacement for Devotos, but at the moment I feel like I need the attack speed from Devotos. I had another chest piece here, which is a better base. Again, this is good spell suppression, big life, but the suffixes need sorting out, but it's something we could do. I had a quiver here, which is, unfortunately, the suffixes didn't work. I hit the prefixes, which are pretty good, and then I had reroll suffixes 6 times, keeping the best outcome, and unfortunately, it rolled accuracy and 2 lots of resistances. But this would be a good option for trying to get the suffixes wiped. So now we'll just cover off the switch to crit. Apologies, I did record this live, but I actually messed it up and took some wrong nodes and didn't take some of the biggest nodes going. So I'm just going to explain what I've done in terms of nodes I've added in. There is going to be a POE for this version, so you can just compare it to the one in the last video to see what nodes I've changed. But in terms of gear, all I've got is an Ellie bow with crit on it and then a decent quiver. And then my amulet also had some crit multi on it as well. Before I've switched, I've checked in POB, I've put these 2 items in, done a very rough crit tree to make sure that it was worth swapping, and with a few changes we made, it more than doubles the DPS. So because this bow has some physical damage on it, first thing I've done is swapped my haste aura for hatred. Then on the tree, we've taken these cold nodes here along with fizz converted to cold. Now, the fact we've got big cold on the bow helps, and it makes these nodes worth taking. So we've dropped the bow nodes here. We've also dropped all of the ailment stuff here because I just can't afford to take it. But what we've done is we've taken the reduced effect of chill and cannot be frozen, and I'm just going to have to accept shock and ignite for now until we get later on in the build and we can build in some ailment immunity. I've taken these 2 crit nodes up here. I've specced out here to get more crit and damage. And then really it's just taking crit nodes. So I've taken the projectile crit wheel here. We've finished off the crit wheel there, and then we've taken these crit nodes here. And then the next node is probably going to be the crit multi-mastery. But I'm level 92 and I don't plan on leveling up too soon because I've got lots of tougher content I want to get done. Anointed Fury Bolts because it's nice and cheap. It gives me strength to help again with my chest piece and gives us projectile speed and projectile damage. But that's essentially it for the tree. We're converting a lot of our fizz to elemental, which helps a lot because we do have enough fizz damage to make those nodes worthwhile. If we quickly go back into POB and have a look, if I drop the fizz conversion node, it's actually 9% DPS that I lose. So the sheet DPS it's not fully configured, it's around 260. I would think it's probably a bit higher than that. And it was about 120, I think, on the old setup. So it's definitely more DPS. So all I'll do is run a very quick map showcase to show what this build feels like in T16 maps. So we'll go and do a map. Apologies, this is my 3rd attempt at this. The first one disconnected and I lost the instance. The second I accidentally clicked on Meteor. So 3rd time lucky. And we'll go and do a quick showcase. Now, I'm not expecting it to feel comfortable. I just want it to be doable. If it's a miserable experience, obviously we'll then go and gear up a bit more. But hopefully it's not too bad an experience. Hopefully we get a Legion that we can do. So yeah, so far it feels okay. I think the defenses are Quicksilver. I've been dying to get a Quicksilver flask. I've been stuck on my level 4 one. And then the other thing I obviously forgot to mention is I've obviously gone Diamond Flask for crit. I think I forgot to mention that on the transition part. But there's a few videos on the channel for like transitioning to crit from a non-crit. Oh, it's got beyond on it. Let's see if we can finally get a tainted fusion would be nice. Oh, we have got a Legion. It's probably going to feel absolutely horrendous, but the loot will be good if nothing else. And I'm not bothered about leveling up anymore, which is why I kind of leveled up in yellow maps, because it makes it that it doesn't really matter if I die. I'm not losing much. I'm probably very unlikely to level to 93 until I get my character sorted out a bit more. Why is he not dying? That's weird. Beyond might cause a few problems for this Legion, but... Oh, it's temp chains. That's why it feels like I'm lagging. Now, probably not going to full clear this because I got a bit held up by the Beyond monsters. Yeah, so it doesn't feel too bad. It's obviously not quick, but hopefully we get some decent loot out the chest. So let's go and quickly loot these, and then we'll go and kill the boss. Another quicksilver flask. That's 2. Okay, looks like we've got no loot at all. And that's the one problem with Stream of Consciousness is you don't use scarabs, so your legions can be rubbish. So we spent a long time clearing that, and we literally got nothing for it. God, this feels horrendous with temp chains. But we're surviving just about. Getting ult right at the end of the map, as usual. Oh, it's just so slow with temp chains. Obviously, it's a bit of a double whammy because I was running haste as well, which I've obviously dropped for a hatred for more damage. But it's very noticeable. So damage on the boss is good. Yeah, so I'm happy with that damage. And we got 4 maps to drop as well. So yeah, pretty happy with where we are at the moment. I think I need to make a few tweaks. And then we're good to go, I think. Start farming red maps. So there's going to be just a few bits to close out the video, just going through my inventory and things like that. And then we'll be on to the next episode. So I thought we'd just talk about the character progression so far, and then we'll go through my inventory. Now, unfortunately, I can't do /play because I sit AFK in this account quite a lot. But if we have a look, the total that this character's been is 2 days and 8 hours. But an absolute ton of that, in fact, probably nearly half, is AFK time. So if we have a look at kills, I've killed nearly 200,000 monsters. In terms of the farm earlier with Strand, it was 30 maps, and then obviously some 3-ways, and then inventory sorting and checking POB and stuff was probably about 5 hours. And then that gave me the stuff I needed to go crit, and then transition towards the red maps. So I'll have a quick look at the inventory. Fusion has definitely helped. I've got a lot of currency, and I'm going to keep doing more so that I end up with a really good supply of Chaos Orbs, alchemies, vials, regrets, unmakings, just everything that I need to get the character progressed. Exotic currency is obviously fairly empty because we've not really done many T14 maps and above. In terms of emblems, we've got 3 Maraketh and 2 Karui, but I have been running these consistently, so we have farmed an absolute ton of emblems and we've completed lots of Legion encounters. In terms of scarabs, we're starting to get a little bit of a supply together, but nothing yet. And all we really care about is Legion and Expedition, of which I've got 1 of each. So we're obviously going to stay Stream of Consciousness for the foreseeable future. In terms of uniques, I haven't had much notable drops. I've had Asenath's Gentle Touch drop, which are quite a nice drop. Also had Vixen's Entrapment, which I think is something that people were farming for in the Gauntlet. Other than that, there's not really much to show. So I have had one unique jewel drop from Delirium, which is Veterans Awareness, which I can't really fit into this build. And then there's not really much else to show for it. If we go to Divination cards, we've obviously got a few full sets, but nothing that's really worth turning in. So we'll just look, if we look at linked items, we have 2 of the Chains That Bind, 1 the Dapper Prodigy, and then not really much else. We've got 3 out of 6 of the short bow, but it's item level 50, so it's not really any good. And then obviously we had the Nurse card drop in the last episode, and we've had a Patient drop this episode from a stacked deck. Other than that, there's not really much notable to go through. So I'll have a look at the map tab. We've got 15, T15 and T16 combined. Got a few Kirat missions. So I don't think I'm going to have a problem with map sustain. As you can see, we farmed an absolute ton of maps when we were going and doing the tier 8. So if I ever did need to drop that for whatever reason to farm this tier of content, which might be maybe if we take essences, then I got more than enough maps to do it. We have 1 Hydra map and 1 Purifier. I'll probably run the Purifier because then that gives me another favorite slot. And then in terms of uniques, we have Maelstrom and Chaos that I still need to run. Other than that, it is Hologram Masters and then duplicates. Other than this, which I just wait until I'm super, super overpowered to run because the map just does my head in. This is one we're after, Coward's Trial. Very unlikely to drop it, but with Legion, you've got a chance of getting the unique maps when you use the incubators. And that's part of the reason I'm going to take all of these Kirat nodes, because the more Kirat missions I can get, the better. This also gives you more scouting reports, because if I can turn over Kirat missions really quickly, he's realistically the best chance I've got of getting that map. In fact, every time I've seen it, this league and trade has been through Kirat. So next episode, we're going to cover off a red tier farming strategy. We're going to hopefully have some Kirat missions to cycle through, and we've hopefully got some gear upgrades we can make. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.